On the wall across from the angel is a very different painting. I did not notice it before, so intent I was on the picture of the angels. The others all sleep. Even Kai has slumped over near the door while he insisted on keeping watch. I climb out of bed and try to decide what the painting represents, in its curves, angles, and shapes. But I don't know what it could be. None of the hundreds look like this. They were all clearly people, places, things. After a few moments, I hear Kai move at the other end of the room. Our eyes meet across the gray expanse of the floor and the huddled dark shapes of Indy and Eli. Suddenly, Kai raises to his feet and comes to stand next to me. "Did you sleep enough?" I whisper. "No," he says, leaning in and closing his eyes. When he opens them again, neither of us have words or breath left. We both look at the painting. After a few moments, I ask, "Is it a canyon?" But even in I name the picture, I realize I could be something else. Someone's flesh cut open, a sunset striped above a river. "Love," he says finally. "Love?" I ask. "Yes," he says, "love." I repeat softly, still puzzled. "I think love when I look at it," Kai says, trying to explain. "You might think something else. It's like the pilot in your poem. Everyone thinks something different when they hear the name." "What do you think when you hear my name?" I ask him. "Many things," Kai whispers, sending rivers of chills along the length of my skin. "This, the hill, the carving, places we've been together." He pulls back and I feel him looking at me, and I hold my breath because I know there's so much he sees. "Places we haven't been together," he says, "yet." His voice sounds fierce as he speaks of the future. We both want to move, to be outside. Indy and Eli still asleep, and we don't want to disturb them. They'll be able to see us from the window when they awake. This canyon that I earlier thought so barren and dry has a surprising amount of green, especially near the stream. Watercress lace the edge of the marshy banks. Moss jewels and red rocks along the river. Swamp grass tangles, green bladed with gray. I step against the ice and the edge of the stream, and it breaks, reminding me of the time I shuddered the glass and protected my dress fragment back in the burrow. Looking down at where I press my foot, I see that even the ice I've broken is green under the white. It is exactly the color of my dress from the MASH banquet. I notice that none of this green is the first time through the canyon. I fix on finding a sign of Kai. I look up at him walking along the stream, and I notice the ease of his walk, even when his steps in place were shifting sands. He drifted across the path. He looks back at me and stops and smiles. "You belong here, I think. You move differently than you did in society." Everything about the township seemed right for him. The beautiful, unusual paintings, the stark independence of the town. All that's missing are people for him to help lead. He only has the few of us. "Kai," I say, as we reach the end of the strand of trees. He stops. His eyes are all for me. His lips have touched mine, brushed my neck, my hands, the insides of my wrists, each finger. And while we stood kissing that night under the cold burning stars and held on tight, it did not feel that we were stealing time. It felt like it was all our own. "I know," he says. We hold each other's eyes for another long moment before we duck under the branches of the trees. They've withered gray bark and drifts of brown leaves underneath, and moves the side of the canyon wind. As the leaves shift, I see another flat gray stone on the ground, like the one Hunter put down yesterday. I touch Kai's arm. "Are these all places where people are buried?" he says. "Yes, it's called a graveyard." "Why don't they bury them higher?" They need the land for living." "But the books," I say. They stored those so high and the books aren't living. The living still have use for the books, Kai says softly, not for bodies. If the graveyard floods, nothing is ruined, and it wasn't already gone. It's different with the library. I crouch down and look at the stones, the places where people lie and marked in different ways. Names, dates, sometimes a line of verse. What is this writing? I ask. It's called an epitaph, he says. Who chooses it? It depends. Sometimes it's the person who knows they are dying. They choose it. Often it's those left behind who have to choose something that fits the person's life. That's sad, I say, but beautiful. Kai raises his eyebrows at me and I hurry to explain. That deaths aren't beautiful, I say. I mean the idea of the epitaph. This society chooses what's left of us when we die. They say it goes on your history. Still, I wish again that I had taken the time to view grandfather's microcard more closely before I left. But grandfather did decide what was left of him as far as the preservation goes. Nothing. Did they make stones like this in your family village? I asked Kai. And soon as I do, I wish I hadn't done it. I wish I hadn't asked for that part of the story yet. Kai looks at me. Not for my parents, he says. There wasn't time. Kai, I say, but I turn away. He turns away and walks another row of stones. My hand feels cold now without his around it. I shouldn't have said anything except for grandfather. The people I've seen die were not people I've loved. It was as though I perceived down into the long dark canyon where I have not had to walk. As I move between the stones, careful not to step on any of them, as the society and Hunter write about the life expectancy out here. Most of the lifespan doesn't reach 80 years. Other children lie on the ground too, besides the one Hunter buried. So many children die here. I say out loud, I'd hoped the girl yesterday was an exception. Young people die in society too, Kai says. Remember Matthew? Matthew, I repeat as I hear his name. I suddenly remember Matthew. Really remembered him. Think of him by the name for the first time in years instead of just the first Markingham boy. The one who died in a rare tragedy at the hands of an anomaly. Matthew, 4 years older than Alexander and me. So much older as to be untouchable, unreachable. He was a nice boy who said hello to us on the street, but was years ahead of us. He carried tablets and went to second school. The boy who remembered now that his name had been given back to me was enough like Kai to be his cousin, but taller, bigger, and less quick and smooth. Matthew. It was almost as though his name died with him. The thought naming the loss would have made it more real. But not as many. I say, just him. He's the only one you remember. Were there others? I asked, shocked. Sound from behind makes me turn. It's Eli and Indy closing the door to the burrowed house. Eli lifts his hand to wave, and I wave back. The light is full in the sky now, and Hunter will be here soon. I look down at the stone he placed yesterday and reach out my hand and see the name carved there, Sarah. She had few years. She died at 5. Under the dates is a line from writing. It's a chill as I realize the sound of the line is from a poem. Suddenly across the June, the wind with fingers goes. I reach for Kai's hand and hold it tight as I can so that the cold wind around us won't try to steal him from me. It, with its greedy fingers, its hands, and take things from time that should be spring.